Now, you know what we don't talk about much on the show?
Yemen.
No, not enough. We're talking Yemen every single week, John.
I know.
But what we don't talk much about is the war in Syria.
That's true.
Yes, and it's been going for 7 years as of this week. But you know why we don't talk about it?
Because it's in Syria?
That's one reason. It's definitely not in America, but it is relevant to America. And also, it's complicated and depressing. But complicated and depressing is my middle name. So hit it. The war in Syria. It began with the Arab Spring protests back in 2011, protests that Syrian President Assad immediately squashed, which prompted much bigger protests. Assad fought back harder, and it was on, a full-blown civil war. The Kurds then seceded, Iran came in to support Assad, and wherever Iran goes, the Saudi Gulf State Alliance have to fight them, so the Saudis supported the rebels, which drew in Hezbollah to support Assad and Iran, and they merrily killed each other through 2013 when things stepped up a notch, as Assad killed over 1,000 rebels in a chemical weapons attack, something which Obama had explicitly issued a red line warning about a year earlier. So Obama swung into action.
I determined that it is in the national security interests of the United States to respond to the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons through a targeted military strike.
By passing the decision off to die in Congress. But he still made a great deal.
We could cut the deal that got 100% of the declared chemical weapons out of Syria.
And that worked out so well, they limited Assad to only 161 chemical weapons attacks by 2016. Back to 2014 though, and enter ISIS, who tried to take turf from the Kurds and rebels. The US don't like ISIS very much, so now they start the airstrikes. And by 2015, they're sending in 400 troops to hopefully train up 5,000 rebels. Turkey feels left out, so they start fighting the Syrian Kurds to stop them causing trouble with the Turkish Kurds. Assad's buddy Russia joins the party as well, not to protect their gas pipeline, of course, but to take on ISIS. Except, it turns out that most of their bombs are landing on the rebels. But don't worry, rebels, you've got those 400 US troops training you, remember? Except, they spent $500 million training 4 or 5 fighters. Hope they're good fighters. So, at the end of 2015, the chart of who's fighting who in Syria looks like this. So that should help clear things up. You can see why the State Department listed bringing peace and security to Syria as one of their top 2015 accomplishments. To 2016, when Obama sends in 250 more troops. And why not, after the great job the first 400 did? Meanwhile, things are stepping up another notch in Aleppo.
And what is Aleppo?
Why, it's a smouldering hole in the ground after Russia and Assad teamed up to level it, particularly focusing on bombing humanitarian convoys, medical facilities and first responders. At one point in time, there's an attack on a medical facility every 17 hours. And it works. Assad takes back Aleppo. It's Trump time, and he immediately sends in 250 Marines. But Sean Spicer called it
sending a few hundred advisors.
Although a few days later they announced they were sending 1,000 troops. Assad launched another chemical attack, but this time Trump attacked him back. And he kept on attacking, at least in bits and pieces. But then, finally, a breakthrough. Sean Spicer learned how to say Bashar al-Assad's name.
With Bashar al-Assad in charge.
Bashar al-Assad, I know you've mispronounced his name a few times.
And also, the rebels in America took back Raqqa from ISIS. Finally, this year, when America bombed Russia and Assad more, there were more chemical attacks, Israel got involved, we're seeing Aleppo Mark II and E-Scooter, and there was a ceasefire, which was broken before it started. And after all that fighting, chemical weapons and airstrikes, 29,000 airstrikes from America and its allies alone, this is the scorecard. 400,000 have died. 5.6 million have fled the country, 6.1 million have been internally displaced, 13.1 million need humanitarian assistance, and 70% of Syrian children have signs of PTSD. But America isn't going anywhere. Which leads to a very simple question.
We are now in a shooting war in Syria.
right,
which has had the worst civil war in the world in the last few years, and I want to know how specifically that benefits America. I think it's a fair question given the recent past.
Hopefully we'll learn the answer to that in the next 7 years.